Happy December 23rd. Today I want to talk about a spin-off technology from accelerated physics that's helped change the lives of many people around the world. And the technology is hadron therapy, and it's a form of cancer therapy where we irradiate the body with hadrons. Now traditionally we have X-ray therapy, which is where we irradiate the body with X-rays. So if we imagine I have my arm here and there's a tumour in here, and we fire X-rays onto the arm, and this irradiates the tissue in front of the tumour, it irradiates the tumour and the tissue after the tumour. Now the problem with X-ray therapy is that the absorption of X-rays falls off exponentially with the depth in the body. So if we have an x-axis here as depth and a y-axis as the dose absorbed, it goes down like this. And that means if the beam comes in this way, the tissue here gets a very high dose, the tissue here gets a low dose, and the tissue in the middle gets a medium dose. So if we know where the tumour is, we can fire the X-rays and it will cause more damage to the healthy tissue here, less damage to the healthy tissue here, and a medium amount of damage to the tumour. Well, one of the ways we can get around this problem is we can rotate the source of X-rays. And when we do that, the healthy tissue gets a uniform dose, and the tumour gets a higher dose, and in that way we can irradiate the tumour preferentially. Now the advantage that hadron therapy has is that as the particles pass through, these are particles that have mass and they have charge, they're ions. They slow down as they pass through the healthy tissue, and then they slow down to a critical point known as the Bragg peak, and at that point the rate of interaction increases dramatically, and then as it passes the Bragg peak it falls off. Now this means that we can target a certain depth into the body. What we do is we work out how deep the tumour is, and how much healthy tissue we have to pass through before we get to the tumour. And then since we know the depth of that healthy tissue, we can work out how much these ions will be slowed down, and then we can work out what energy we have to fire these ions at the body. That way the tissue in front of the tumour gets a low dose, the tissue behind the tumour gets a low dose, and the tumour itself gets a very high dose, orders of magnitude larger in a lot of cases. And then we can perform the same trick where we rotate the source. And by doing that, we can target this tumour, and most of the healthy tissue remains largely unaffected. This is fantastic technology. Now the accelerators that are used to do this, which are currently being developed, are known as non-scaling fixed field alternating gradient accelerators. Now we don't need to know the details to actually know why it's become important in recent decades. All we need to know is that it takes a lot of CPU time to calculate how to treat this beam of particles to make sure that we can contain it properly. And we have that computing power now. We didn't have it in 1950 when these machines were first proposed. So it's only been in recent years that we've been able to use hadron therapy. Now hadron therapy has three major advantages over traditional X-ray therapy. The first one we've already mentioned, it has a lower dose for the healthy tissue, which is very, very important. The second one is that because these are hadrons, they interact more strongly with the tissue that makes up the tumour. So one of the ways we can actually stop a tumour from spreading is by destroying its DNA. We can actually attack its DNA strand, break the bonds, and then as long as the DNA can't repair itself, that cell will then be incapable of reproducing. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea of how you can damage the DNA of the tumour cell. Now, when a photon hits DNA, it generally only breaks one of the strands. It just interacts once. Whereas when a hadron passes through and hits the DNA, it can break both of the strands and make an irreparable amount of damage to the DNA. So that's another advantage. The third advantage is that there are many tumours which are in parts of the body which are very difficult to target. Now the example I used was in my arm. Now the arm doesn't contain any vital organs, so you can irradiate it from all the different angles. It might damage the tissue around the tumour, but it won't kill me because there's no vital organs there. As long as the dose is controlled, then I'll have some health side effects, but I should survive the treatment. There are other parts of the body where tumours grow where that's not the case. For example, if we take the spine in the neck, there can be cancerous growths which actually grow around the spinal column. Now, if we tried to treat that with X-ray therapy, we'd be firing X-rays at the spinal column, and that can cause all kinds of complications, including paralysis and worse. There can be tumours which grow around vessels around the heart, around other vital organs. And so hadron therapy might be the only available radiative therapy that we have for those kinds of tumours. So it allows us to treat tumours in parts of the body that we've not had very good records with in the past. So it allows us to treat some of the tumours which are in very difficult parts of the body, very fragile parts. The kind of situation we're facing with this new technology is very impressive actually. It's getting to the point where the limiting factor is how quickly you can monitor the patient. And what I mean by that is because they are firing into a given depth into the human body, they need to know how that human body is moving. So we're facing the situation where we have to make sure we know how the patient is breathing, how quickly their chest is rising, that kind of thing, how quickly gases are passing through the body. And if we can monitor that in real time, then that increases the precision with which we can apply the hadron therapy techniques. Now to me that's incredibly impressive, that the precision we're dealing with here means that we have to have real-time monitoring of the patient and to be able to predict things like how quickly they're going to breathe, or if their heart is beating and we're treating a growth near the heart, at what speed the heart beats. And that is sort of related to what I was saying earlier about this being a very CPU intensive process. Predicting what the body is going to do next is incredibly difficult and would be almost impossible without real-time monitoring by computers. So that is a fantastic spin-off from accelerator physics, which we wouldn't have without the kind of research that we do at places like CERN, SVAC, Fermilab, DAISY, and all these other labs around the world. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're thinking, well, why should we be funding this this kind of science? I mean, it's very expensive, it's very time consuming, it uses rare resources such as liquid helium. Well, one of the reasons is the spin-off technologies are so advantageous to us. They improve the quality of life of thousands, perhaps millions of people around the world, and will continue to make even better improvements in the future. And then another spin-off, of course, is the World Wide Web, which was developed at CERN. So somebody had the idea to connect two computers together and see how that increased the amount of work that they could do and increase the capabilities they had. And then they added more computers, and eventually we had the World Wide Web. So you're watching this video on the internet now. That would not be possible if it wasn't for the people at CERN who decided to put together a network of computers. So these kinds of spin-off technologies really do improve the quality of life for people all over the world. And whilst I don't think that should be how we justify our funding to the rest of the world, I think it's a fantastic benefit. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.